Welcome to Resiliency, the podcast. Today's guest has been building the future before most of us even had internet access. He is a pioneer in artificial intelligence and digital transformation, and one of the original minds behind a name I know you'll all know, and that is MapQuest. This was one of the earliest icons of the internet age. I certainly remember using it all the time. But beyond that, today's guest has spent decades advising Fortune 500 companies, leading tech at major corporations, and shaping ethical AI policy at the global level. But what makes his story really resonate for those of you listening here at Resiliency, the podcast, is this. He does not just ask what AI can do. He asks what it should do for society, for individuals, and especially for those who could be left behind. He is not only the cutting edge of AI, he is helping to lead how it's going to shape our future. So we want to invite you listeners, if you're curious, if you're skeptical, if you might feel overwhelmed by AI, this is the episode for you, because today's guest will challenge you, ground you, and maybe even inspire a little bit of wonder. With that, we are so excited, honored, and just delighted to welcome the brilliant, the incredible Mr. Simon Greenman. Welcome, Simon.
Pleasure to be here. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Well, I'll clue us in now. Maybe it's a good time to say for all of our listeners, we used the power of AI to create that introduction. It's the first time we've done it. Usually our executive producer writes it out, but in inspiration for all that you've done, Simon, and really changing the landscape of technology, we thought, let's dive right in. So it sounds like we did okay. How do you think AI performed with that, Simon?
That performed with that. I want to know which tool you actually used. I perhaps should use it to inspire me for my writing and things like that. So, but yes, I mean, as an English person, maybe a bit hyperbolic, but I can take it. Thank you very much, Jen.
I specialize in hyperbole, my friend, so thanks for pulling that out.
Welcome to the Over the Top Resiliency, the podcast, Simon. That's how we roll here.
Great. Love it.
And I'm just so happy that you're here. Just really, really, really. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to kick us right off. What does resiliency mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I mean, I think I started thinking about it. Resilience, how we bounce back when we have difficult times, which we've all had in our careers and personal life, and, you know, how we adapt to the evolving world. But for myself, that's been involved in technology since I was a wee little lad growing up in the UK. It's really about, for me, resilience is how we sort of adapt and how I adapt to the future and sort of leap ahead into the future. And that's really been my career is about, you know, technology is a constant, change is a constant. How can I embrace it for myself, but also how can I embrace it, what's effectively disruption for the people I work with and for society where I can make an impact here. But it really is that theme of the world never stops evolving, world never stops changing. And I think for those that can embrace it early and adapt to it, you know, they can help shape the future. And that's really what resilience is for me.
I love the words that you've used because, you know, you've talked about bounce back, you've talked about adapt, you've talked about leap ahead, and those are phrases that we use here frequently. It's sort of that all-encompassing, you pivot and shift depending on the situation in which you find yourself. But I'd like to ask you, because as Jen said in the introduction, MapQuest, you helped launch one of the most iconic tools of the very early internet, MapQuest. What resilience did it take to ride the wave of early tech innovation? And how did those experiences shape your view of what was to come next?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I mean, we launched MapQuest, what was it? February the 5th, 1996. So it was coming up for 30 years ago.
My God.
And when we launched it, nobody knew what the internet was. There might have been 5 million users of the internet across the planet with 6 billion people on it. So, I mean, the first thing was skepticism that we encountered back then because nobody knew what it was. And I remember the business management at the time who were investors in the company were saying, well, how do you make money from the internet? You know, you can sell print maps, you can sell CD-ROMs of maps, but how do you make money at the internet? So frankly, there was a lot of skepticism behind it at the time. So there was importance to believe in the future of technology when it was unproven came out there. But there was other things as well. I mean, we were a small little entity in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that's perhaps known for the Pennsylvania Dutch Amish. It's not known for sort of changing the world. And there was even assumptions in the press when we launched that we must be in San Francisco if we did something like this from the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. But I remember that we launched it early in the morning. We'd been up all night putting the servers together, literally putting the cables in together. It turned on the switch. And we watched the people come in, and we just couldn't believe who had found it so quickly. But within about an hour or two, the site crashed. There was so much traffic coming in from the early days of the internet. And we scrambled. I mean, we scrambled for the first 3 or 4 months because it took about a month to get a new internet pipe, and it was 1.5 megabits at the time. Get another pipe, it filled up, it crashed again. So we spent the first 3 or 4 months basically trying to keep this site alive. We had to rewrite the software to make it more efficient within the first month. And then eventually we gave up on Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because we couldn't get enough bandwidth to support it. So one Friday we packed up all the servers, put them in FedEx, shipped them out to Denver. However, fingers crossed that they would actually arrive on time. And by Monday, we had this thing up and running again. Stressful to say the least, and we didn't have a backup plan. If those servers went to the wrong place, we were kind of hosed at the time, but we didn't have enough money to do much else with it. So it was an amazing time, an amazing venture, but it took a cool head, some calm, and fingers crossed that it would actually come together.
Your story is resilience in action. It strikes me, actually, Simon, what really is striking me as I think about this is how much of a scientist you have to be to do the type of technology you do. You know, like it's really data science. And in science, there are failures. You test and you fail and you test and you fail. And I think that resilience has such a connotation of failing forward. Yeah. And that's really what you did. What I wanted to hone in on before I go to kind of the next question is you mentioned we scrambled. And I think that's a really key pivotal moment for corporations, for humans, everyone, as they're interacting with tech and they're reaching those problems. Like you said, your servers were overloaded. Other people are trying AI. They're finding it to be difficult. How do you how do you infuse resilience into that scramble is my question. Meaning, how do you turn it from being afraid of it? I'm afraid just to ship my servers to Denver. I'm afraid. How do you turn that fear into that drive that then brought MapQuest to the huge impact that it made in the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, at one level, I think it's important that we have some level of emotional awareness. And I know that's somewhat cliche, but knowing that we are, as humans, our amygdala in our brain, you know, it's our primitive brain cell where we have a fight, a fear, a flee reaction. But being aware of what we were feeling, I think was so important. But I think at the other side of it, we had no choice. We had to do something. There was no plan. There was no alternative. We had to move forward. And as a business and an organization. So all of those things meant that we had to keep focused, somewhat calm, though, you know, during this, there are moments of just absolute panic. Deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. But it was a time that we were also excited about it because we knew we were doing something so different and even important. You know, we were a little bit of a team, a small outfit in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but somehow we knew that what we were doing was an important time in history and change in history, and hopefully they make a little bit of impact on the history books out of it. So, you know, it was all of that. But I don't think we ever lose fear per se, but we become aware and we know how to control it better in the midst of this.
Brilliantly said. I think really well done. And I think a nice bridge to kind of the next question and topic. And I'll echo what you said, which is you had no choice. And that was in your business ownership. Now I'm going to take it more to that societal, all of humanity right now. There's almost kind of no choice to put your face forward into this new AI that is here. It's all here. It's coming. And so my question is, what do you say to people who are overwhelmed, who are skeptical. You talked about skepticism at the beginning. People who are afraid that AI is coming for their jobs, it's coming for their creative works, it's coming for their identity. Like, how can you help them to see AI as more of, can it be a partner in personal and professional resilience? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, and I understand all of those reactions, and every time there is a major technology shift, and we can go back to history books, the Industrial Revolution in the UK, when the internet came along, when the printing presses came along in the 16th century, there was fear of change, and that's natural. But the reality and why it's so scary at the moment of generative AI is we've never seen technology move so quickly in terms of innovation with such impact and a speed of change. And I call it the half-life of innovation. Is how long does it take for a new innovation? Every day we hear on the radio, OpenAI's launched this. There's a new model from China. You can do this. And we're all overwhelmed. It's almost like a tsunami of information hitting us. And we feel like we're losing control in all of this, because we don't understand it. It's going on. We don't understand. But what I would say to people, and the studies also bear this out, is the reality is this is going to be woven into the fabric of society, into the fabric of organizations. Every corporate function from HR to operations to sales is going to have it. So unfortunately, the reality is, but lean into it. And the reason to lean into it is the studies show that job satisfaction goes up, for example. And that we actually haven't had that. Most of the technology that corporates launch, we hate because it doesn't work very well. We have to log on through 50 different interfaces. Then we ask this. It's just, yeah. But what's happening here is generative AI, it's best thought of as almost a co-pilot, a co-intelligence. All of us find it difficult to create, but all of us find it easy to be a critic. So if I've got to write a first draft of a report, or I've got to write a job description, or I've got to critique a document, or I've got to respond to a belligerent email from a colleague, it's great at doing a first draft and coming up with something. And then I can edit it and put myself in it. And then I feed it back to the computers and we edit. And so it becomes almost a brainstorming, iterative partner, a co-creation partner. And then, but what's really interesting, and where you're seeing it being used in the workforce, is in so many different areas. So, for example, I need an analyst. Help me analyze this document. I need a coach. What do I do in this situation? I need a marketing expert. I need an HR expert. And it's so powerful. It can take on all these different personas and help us. So it's not surprising in some ways when people learn to use these tools, they actually find it very supportive and very helpful in their daily jobs. But they just need the right training and coaching behind it.
You've talked about how AI, generative AI, and new technology, as a new technology, is really being embraced by employees. And we can see that because I think, Jenn and I, we use it in different ways in our own businesses, and we can see that. But if we look at it on a slightly different side of the coin, you and I have been doing a little bit of work in the UK on how we can use generative AI to help with things like adult social care.
Yeah.
How do we bring AI in to deal with an aging population, to deal with issues around loneliness and things like that? So it's got a dual purpose inside, outside. So my question to you is this. AI has the power to democratize education, healthcare, legal services. How can we make sure that these tools uplift people, especially those people who are the most vulnerable? And I know that's a passion of yours. So that people aren't left behind, and the gap doesn't keep getting wider and wider.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think that word you hit upon is democratize it, because, things like legal services or therapy and counseling, they're expensive. They end up as the preserve of the middle and upper middle class, and high quality education also can be preserved. So can we actually widen the services? So I'm actually really excited, and my work when I was at the World Economic Forum, we were looking at the question of how we could use AI for better for society of the world, and also at the same time put in place the safeguards and guardrails so it wasn't used for ill as much. So I think, your examples are absolutely right. The society has many problems, from global warming to loneliness to we're living longer but not necessarily healthy. And how can AI help in those different areas? And the number one use case I was reading in one report for ChatGPT and the other sort of chat tools was actually companionship and support. So can we put a sort of Alexa type device in with a lot of elderlies and personalize it for them? Can we use AI technologies to help elderly for in-care support? So making sure that they're eating right, they're not falling, that they have companionship. There's some great opportunities to really help for care of the elderly and things like that. So the main thing is, how do we make sure government, society bring these new capabilities to their citizens? And how do we make sure that it's used for good, basically, within the context of that?
I really want to dig into that for just 1 second before we go to the next topic, because I find this specifically AI and adult social care a really interesting concept. And I also find this idea of companionship, because I want to beg this question, and this is just for discussion, but the idea is, and you hear this debated, it's are we going to lose human connection? And I'll give you this example. When we were talking about AI, and this is me and my husband, Asif, who's our executive producer, I kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, wait. Like, you could take, I was thinking about like my own family, and I thought, let's say I have someone in my family who's upset that she doesn't hear enough from her grandchildren. You could take all the letters, all of the voice recordings, all the videos from someone's grandchildren, and you could create a companion that sounds like and feels like that grandchild. And you could have someone perhaps with dementia having conversations, living a beautiful, happy life, feeling as though they're connecting with that human, but they're not. And so I'm interested in your take on that from an ethical standpoint. How do you find true authenticity while still tackling the problem of loneliness?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question, that one, and I don't think there are any easy answers to it, because our brains are fooled by almost the avatars who could replicate human behaviors, and you're actually seeing it, that people are getting addicted to these chatbots and avatars and things like that. And in some ways, yes, it's providing companionship, but is it removing them from the real world? And so are they leaving real human connections behind? And the answer is, yeah, we run a real risk of that. And in some ways it's too easy, but it's not dissimilar in some ways how digital technologies are pulling us away from inhuman interactions. You're seeing that sort of the Generation Ys are much more comfortable texting on their phones than having, in some cases, human interactions. And what does that do to us as a society? And I think it's something we should take very seriously and worry about. So yes, it's the right question to ask that we need to work through. I think that the other things that, our brain is so easily fooled by these interactions because they just seem so human-like. We're getting addicted to our chatbot. There's other things I worry about that in there is we start to lose some of the important cognitive skills that we need in this world. Thinking skills, critical thinking skills. We outsource everything to this Chat GPT because the answers are so good. And I think to your theme, Jen, it's the erosion of empathy. Do we start to lose real empathy with humans that only comes when we see each other in the flesh or talk to each other? Yeah, and it does risk that undermining of social skills out there. I think it also, there's an argument that sort of moral de-skilling as well. It weakens our moral reasoning and skills when we don't have to see people in the flesh. So, yeah, we're going to have to watch that. There's no doubt about it.
Fascinating. Well said. And I think you bring to such an interesting thing as you talk about the cognitive. I've heard people talking about, I liked how you described, obviously, that Microsoft calls their AI tool tool, Copilot, as you're saying, it's a co-worker with you, but it helps to share that cognitive load. And I could see how one thing in particular I wanted to bring up was the idea of students, because you think about like, I'm through with my school, I'm running my company, like I'm using AI, but if I've never tackled the problems that I tackled in the years I've had on this earth, I wouldn't have the experience I have. So how can we, and this is delving back into your question, because your answer was kind of, look, it's a big thing we got to talk about. But when you look at kind of young users of AI, how can we keep critical thinking in the forefront? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, and if you talk to teachers, they're all wrestling with that at every level, universities, high school, that sort of thing. Because at one level, it's a phenomenal tool for accelerating our learning. I mean, get on there, it can answer. It's like having a personal teacher there. And a coach, a teacher, we can give it any scenario. It gives us crisp, insightful answers. It can tune into our personal level of learning. So amazing. Imagine 7 billion people on the planet, or 2 billion students have their own personal coach and tutor. Fantastic. But at the same time, if we never learn things like thinking, critical writing, memory, if we outsource all of this, we're kind of hosed. At one level, we really are, if we never learn that. So teachers are really thinking about this, and some I've seen argue, say, we have to go back to pen and paper, basically. You have exams in pen and paper, or maybe a keyboard, but not attached to the internet. The other examples are, they need to see the evolution of writing, because writing in many respects is thinking. So do you have to have the ability, when you're in a Word document, show the different versions of thinking, the 10 different versions and comments and things like that? Their teachers are proposing that sort of thing. So yes is the answer. But I think it's going to be critical that it sort of goes back to your earlier point, that we have to see the interaction of thinking between humans and observe it. Otherwise, we're just going to outsource it, to the computers.
Yeah, and then we're losing something. Forgive me, but this is my, I'm more on the artist side, but we're losing what I would call the magic. We have the capability. The capability is to get that answer, to do that. But the magic is that human connection. And I just want to say, I like that concept of the evolution of writing. It's like when I was young, when you did math, you had to show your work. Yeah. You couldn't just give the thing, you had to show. So it sounds like we're going to go to a place where it's like, show your work. I want to see how you arrived at this thought. I think that's really cool. Yeah. Now, since I mentioned being an artist, that's another whole realm of stuff that I'd love to pick your brain on. There's huge societal implications and questions around art in particular, everything from misinformation to stealing from artists to devaluing human-made work. What are those broader societal risks, and what's your take on that at this juncture in AI?
Yeah, great question. Such big questions for society here. I mean, going through the sort of the list of things there, I mean, one of the great things and dangerous things about generative AI is it can write, it can make pictures, it can come up with deep fakes. You can create, there's a site called HeyGen that within 2 or 3 minutes, you can give it a video of yourself. It will clone your voice, it will clone your face, and then I can put any words to my mouth and your mouth, basically. It will be perfectly synchronized to it. So what happens in a world where you can create deep fakes, you can create misinformation, disinformation, and distribute it? So, do we end up in a situation where democracy starts to get undermined? The algorithms only show us information that reflects our views and our prejudices. What happens to democracy behind all of this? So there's real risks, and it's going to get worse and worse, I think, with time. So, I mean, the other side of it is we have to train and educate our children today into what is a deep fake, how to spot deep fakes, how to spot misinformation, how to make sure you're looking at multiple viewpoints and there's just one out there. So, that's one aspect of it. Another risk you talk about is the magic of artists and copyright and things, because underlying generative AI, is something called, people have heard of things like large language models, foundational models, but these are huge computational engines that have sucked up pretty much every picture, every word, every video, every audio from the internet. And they are just so massive computational engines running in these huge data centers that are sucking up gigawatts of energy. But they can just replicate what they've seen before. So, Jenn, if they've seen enough pictures of you, of your work, artist work out there, they can replicate it. Music, pictures. You know, if I say to tools like Midjourney or DALL-E from OpenAI, you know, create a picture in the style of Picasso, it's really good, you know. But there's another one. I think there was an article the other day in the Atlantic magazine talking about how some of the large owners of these models had given access to, I think it's LibGen, and LibGen is basically has it has all the books out there that have been published and academic articles. It's breaking copyright. And so how some of these models are trained on copyrighted materials, and there's no recompense to the artists and the writers and the creators there. So we as a society have to sort of figure out how we compensate, I think, the artists for their work and the creatives out there. We don't know how, and we don't know how to enforce it yet. So.
Yeah, we just have to think about a different way of compensating artists, because in essence, they're still feeding the machine. They've been feeding it for years. And so that makes a lot of sense. I also just want to make a comment, because you spoke to the massive computational energy and that massive, these massive systems. I read an article recently that said being polite to ChatGPT is costing something like $9 billion in just energy power. And I am a culprit. I'm always like, thank you, ChatGPT. I try to be real nice to it, but it's because and my company's in more of the real estate space. There's a lot of energy implications to generative AI, because those data centers have to stay running, and they require a tremendous amount of energy. So that's an entirely different conversation. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's absolutely true, because the size of these engines are just, it's hard to imagine them. The data center, there was that mention of the cost of being nice to it. But there was another article talking about maybe it's Microsoft, I think, was going to help resurrect 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania in the 70s, had a near meltdown. And because there's not enough energy to do this, and you need gigawatts of power they're talking about for these future data centers. And I was in Saudi Arabia last year talking with an energy group there. They were talking about sustainable data centers, because they not only have so much oil, which is not necessarily sustainable, but so much sunshine. So let's set up data centers. So you can set up data centers anywhere around the world here. But yeah, there's a vast, vast demand for computational power out there, because they do so many calculations and they're so huge behind it. So yeah, so the negative side of all of this is the climate footprint behind this. But then there's a lot of smart engineers saying, how do we make it more energy efficient? But then demand is going to go up, because it's going to continue to be used and get more complicated. So there's a race from demand and bringing down efficiency and making it more sustainable going on here. But yeah, it's definitely an area that we all need to think about as society.
I smile, and I'm going to let Kelly get to the next question, but I only smile because there's so much fear of like, AI is going to take our jobs. AI is going to take our jobs. The sentence you just said talked about all the job creation. There are so many new problems to solve. There are climate problems to solve. There's energy problems. There's real estate problems to solve. So that's a lot of new jobs for people that's coming from generative AI.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, every time there is a sort of revolution in technology and industry, that ultimately ends up driving productivity, which is improving society, makes things cheaper. But there also can be a period of displacement for jobs where we have to get retrained here. So, I mean, going back to your earlier question, the reality is for a lot of people in employment, the most important thing probably now is the future will be about generative AI tools in the workplace, is learning them. Because those people who don't learn these tools will be left behind. That's for sure. But those people who embrace these tools and they get more productive, They might have more time for higher level strategic management work, but it's key that everyone leans into these tools. Now, the good thing about that is there are tools to help you learn the tools. So there's things like personalized coaching. So how do I use ChatGPT? And there will be a tool there that helps you to use it. You could do this, you could do that. This is a better way of doing it. And to your point, there's new sort of roles and tasks, prompt engineering, prompt design. How do we use these tools best? That sort of thing. So, and who knows what types of jobs will come along about this. And even to your earlier point, if we democratize these technologies and legal services become cheaper, education becomes more personalized, we get better as society, I think, from all of these things. Better healthcare. Imagine all the people around the world that don't have personalized healthcare, but you could now go and with your phone, you have some skin condition, you can have the phone look at it, tell you what you have and make recommendations, or I've got these symptoms. So I think that there's always with any technology revolution that there's pluses and minuses, but in the long term, as long as we have the right guardrails on it, I think society should benefit. But I'm an optimist, so techno-optimist.
Yeah, you're an optimist, and as you should be, because we go back to all of the deep experience that you have. I mean, I'm still sitting here chuckling about the fact that you opened up MapQuest in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the heart of Mennonite country in America. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So, right? So that's great. But I'm going to go off script here because I think with the flow, it's the flow of what you just said to Jenn. If people are interested and curious and use their sense of wonder to try and learn better generative AI tools so that there's more efficiency, productivity in the workplace, you have something called an AI Champions program where you help businesses be confident they can bring AI into their workplace. Like it's double-sided, right? So how do we help business owners who might be listening to this, business leaders, understand it's okay to try these things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what we run on the Champions programs is in organizations, there's always a lot of resistance to change. So why not get those who are sort of more leaning into it? They're evangelists, they're passionate about technology, the future, and change. Find 10, 20 sort of champions who would like to evangelize them, teach them how to use these tools, and then coach them through how they can use the tools to innovate themselves. So what's unique about generative AI and its technology is how you can empower those people in the front line, the back office, those in the trenches who are dealing with a lot of the daily grinds, and is you can coach them to use the tools to innovate. So, and we've never had an opportunity to really do bottom-up innovation. Normally it's top-down with the CEO, the board saying, you will do this. But actually you can get people in the trenches for them to find the opportunities, I'm doing these Excel spreadsheets. It takes me 3 hours a day. I've got to write these reports and it takes me half a week to do it. But if you use them, coach them with the tools, they can then use them to help improve those tasks and make it more efficient. So it's a really interesting program that you come out of the back end of it 2 or 3 months later with people in the trenches actually saying, I have innovated and made my job and your job better. And that's really, we haven't seen that opportunity before. And so, yeah, the Champions program is exciting. And it gets the employees to be the agents of change around innovation. And then they can go and spread the word about it.
I have to dig in on that since I have you as an audience. I myself am a business owner. I'm working to implement AI into my company. And the directive I've given my team is anything you put in, scrub it of personal data. So if you're like, don't, So my question to you is when I start working in Excels, I'm looking at my own data. How safe is it for me to upload that Excel into a tool and let it happen? Like, where do I draw the line?
And it's probably the most important question that we see from the enterprises is privacy and security around your data. Is it going to leak out, especially personal customer data and things like that? Absolutely right. So a couple of things. One, it's in a secure environment. Two, the data is not being used by these big companies who produce these models to train the models, because they're taking in data, they use it to improve the models. There's a lot of settings. So the version of, let's say, ChatGPT or the version of Microsoft Copilot, make sure it's the private version that's on there. Great question. And that's a little bit, if you're using free, guess what? Be careful. Free, there's never a free lunch here. You know?
Free is not free.
No, ever,
free.
never.
Yeah.
That's great. Good guidance. Good guidance. Yeah. Oh, well, on that, I'm going to direct us. We're just near the end. We're about to get to the very fun part, which is the rapid fire questions. But before we do that, I want to ask you, Simon, because you are such a voice on this and such an important leader on this. Can you give us one final thought on AI for our audience?
Yeah, I do think it goes back here is that embrace it. Do try it out, because it will be the future. And it's only through trying it that people will feel more comfortable with it. But it's like anything that's complicated, learning a new musical instrument, learning a new language, learning a new mathematics or something. It takes time to get proficient of it. So be patient with yourself and don't get frustrated if it doesn't work the way you do. Put the time into it and learn. And I think people will find, even professional life, personal life, it is something quite magical for the future.
Well
Wonderful.
said. Well said. They're great words of wisdom. And I know in the organization that we have a large language model. And coming back to something you said earlier, Jenn, I have found, because it now speaks in my voice with my tone, if I'm more polite to it, it gives me a better answer than when I'm rude to it.
Thank you. I agree. I'm always polite to my AI.
I know.
But I guess it's costing somebody some money. So
It is. But quality over quantity.
Amen.
Simon, are you ready for our questions?
Okay.
This is the fun part.
All right.
So what's your favorite movie or TV show that makes you feel resilient?
Rapid fire answer. You know what? I'm living in Washington, D.C. at the moment. The West Wing. I've been rewatching The West Wing.
The best show in history. Simon, great taste. Great. That is, love that show.
Yeah, watching it for some sanity. That's what you're doing.
Man.
Oh, I can say that because I'm Canadian. I get to say that. I got my elbows up.
Dreaming of days past.
No. All right, let's go to music. What's your favorite song that makes you feel resilient?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm thinking David Bowie, something like Heroes. We're all heroes just for one day. You know.
And now I want to join you for the drink, because you're such a cool dude, Simon.
He is.
That's awesome.
He is super cool. It's so much fun to work with. Oh my God.
So
okay.
cool.
So what's the last thing that made you laugh out loud? Like big belly
Well,
laugh.
this is it. This is it. I mean, I'm probably not going to share some of what I was thinking there, but in the midst of the reality is right now, we could all cry. The world is changing in ways that we didn't expect. I'm living in Washington. I need to laugh. And I just look for the small things in life. My nieces and nephews have a dog just up the road, and they're just crazy. What they do, they make me laugh. You throw them a ball. Those little touch points in life remind me of it's going to be okay. And I love animals as well. So.
Great answer. Dogs make me happy every single day, so I couldn't agree more.
So what is a question that you would like to leave for a future guest?
Yeah. I think, what is it, one belief or behavior that future guest has had to let go of to be resilient?
Groundbreaking question. I love that question. That is a killer, because you have to release things in order to earn your resilience. Brilliant.
I mean, I think of myself and perfectionism. You have to let go of it.
I find age helps. I find the older I get, the less perfectionist I am. But what a great question. Well, look, I have a question from a past guest that I would like to offer to you. And that question is this. How much of where you got in your life is by design, and how much of it was luck?
I mean, yes is the answer. Yes, all of it. Luck, but we create our luck, being in the right places, the right situations. I mean, I was lucky because I was born to a father who was an academic, who was at a university. I saw computers in the 1970s. So I'm in the lucky parents club in that respect. But at the same time, I fell in love with computers and my whole career has been about it. And I got a degree in AI before nobody knew what the hell that was, that sort of thing. So that was design. And I would throw myself into situations where it would be transformation. It would be cutting edge digital disruption. So that was design. So, and then luck, I was working for a company in 1993. It blew up, needed a job. Friends of mine would say, come out to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We're doing some mapping stuff. You could help us. Luck again. So, I think life is both, but it's putting yourself out there and not to be afraid to frankly fall on your face and get up again. So,
Simon, what an important message for our listeners of Resiliency, the podcast. I for real, like in all, I think we're at 25 episodes, 20. We make our own luck. Because even as you said, you were born with opportunities, but it's your mindset, it's your focus, it's your ability to get back up and try. It is you being an optimist and believing that tech can change the world. It's just beautiful and so inspirational. I think with that, I just want to ask, where can our listeners, if they'd like to know more about Simon Greenman, if they'd like to find you, connect with you, learn about the Champions program, where can they find you online?
Great question. LinkedIn. So there aren't many Simon Greenmans, so you can find me pretty quickly. Just send me a message, reference, resilience, podcast, that sort of thing. That's probably the most reliable. My company consultancy is bestpractice.ai, but LinkedIn, I think, is the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic. So for our listeners, that's SimonGreenman on LinkedIn. Look for Mr. Simon. And Simon, because we know AI is changing about as fast as it can be, we hope that we might even have you back as a guest in the future, Simon. What a delight this has been, and so much that we've learned. So guys, with that, I want to just remind you that you can always find the brilliant, wonderful, our co-host, Dr. Kelly Culver, online, also on LinkedIn or on Instagram. You can find her also at her company, which is theculvergroup.ca. That's .ca because she still sits right there in the beautiful country that is Canada. You can find me online, Jenn Quader, JENNQUADER, all the socials, and you can find my company at thesmartagency.com. And with that, we just want to thank you. We know that resiliency is an important topic. It becomes more important every day. And if you're someone who's looking to be more resilient, we hope you will like this episode. We hope you'll come back to see us again. Until then, embrace AI, as our guest said today. Try new things, be brave, be resilient, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again.